a short economics lesson, and if we don't understand this, we can understand nothing about what's going on. The economic stresses that we're feeling throughout the society come exactly here. This is just my way of presenting it. No one else in the Congress does this. It's the only way I can make sense of it, because I have to simplify everything that they tell us in Washington, because they make it extraordinarily complex, and it is not extraordinarily complex when you break it down. First of all, we as a government are spending $3.5 trillion. 3.5 is, and so normally they put all the zeros up here and you can't tell if there's 6 or 7 or 20 zeros, and so you just lose it. So I just round it down, 3.5 T. That's enough to understand. We are bringing into the government 2.2 T. Your business could not work that way. Your family cannot work that way. And the United States government can't work that way. This is the same thing that is going on in every state. Every state. California is the worst of all the states. It's running far worse condition than this. Now, you can do the math and you can see that our deficit is 1.3. You simply subtract the revenue from the expenses, exactly like you would do over the dining room table for your own family. We have $1.3 trillion that we don't have, and we're spending it, so then we have to borrow it. We're having to borrow it from China and Japan. Now, if you are watching the news, you will know that Japan will not be lending us any money anytime in the 20, 30, 40-year period. So you have to ask yourself, what is our banker going to do? What would your banker do? Would your banker continue to fund you? Or would he say, he would clear his throat, and we would say, you better do something different. If you have watched closely in the last year, China twice has said we're not going to loan you any more money. They said it nicely. They said we're starting to sell U.S. Treasury bills, and that's the vehicle. If you look on a graph, the Chinese holding in Treasury bills has gone up, and then it is going down, just like this. Our banker is in the process of saying no more. When we borrow, when we cannot borrow enough money, then we do what governments do. Any estimation what that is? We print money. We're printing 2.6 trillion last year. 2.6 T. Now, when we print money, no money is free, so when we print it, we're actually taking it away from you, silently without your consent. We're driving the value of your money down because we're making more of it. If we started and everyone in the room had $1, and then we printed 10 of those, your dollar would basically be worth 1 dime. You understand how we're doing that? That's what's going on here. So you see the price of gasoline going up? So people say, well, it's because of the instability in the Middle East. It's not. If it were only gasoline going up, then you could say, yes, that's the instability. Or it's the evil oil companies taking too much profit. But it's not just gas. You are seeing the price of vegetables go up. You're seeing the price of gold, silver. Everything is going up dramatically. That's because we're printing money, and the money you have in your pocket and in your savings account is worth less. It's taking more dollars to buy it. The vegetables have no more value today than they did a year ago. Gold and silver have no more value today than they did yesterday, but the price is going up because your dollars are worth less. That's because of these situations. We're having to make it balance. To let you know how, which countries are doing this even worse than we are, you look at Argentina. Last year in Argentina, they had 1,500% inflation. That means if you had $1,500 in your bank account at the beginning of the year, it's worth $100 at the end of the year. This is what we're doing. Now, when deficit is incurred because we have committed more than we can bring in, it is deficit now, but when we spend the money, that is, we have said we're going to spend it, it's deficit. As soon as we spend it, it runs into this debt barrel. So I have kind of just a visualization that that deficit is running out the pipeline, and we spend it and it goes into the debt barrel. And we owe $15 trillion in debt. The alarm flags should be going off in everyone's ears right now. Flags don't go off in your ears, they go off in your eyes. The alarm bell should be going off, and you should see the warning flag. Okay. But then you see that this debt is running over the edge of the barrel. So we've got this green sludge coming out, debt running over the barrel because the barrel won't hold it anymore. And you see that we really have 202 trillion debt. This is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now you know that we owe them. You know that we're going to fund them, but it's too uncomfortable for politicians to come and say we owe $217 trillion. So they simply omit this. They let it run out on the ground and say, well, it's not in a debt barrel. They redefine it in order to not alarm you. They've been redefining it. Both parties have been redefining it for decades so that you will not know the truth. Now the truth is smacking us in the face because you see our economy going down, employment is going up, and the value of your dollar going down. This is all related right together. You see that we could pay all of the money we're bringing in for 100 years, not paying anything towards operations, and we could not pay ourselves out of debt. This is going to cause the absolute failure of our economy. This graph shows it. You can go to the White House, OMB, or you can go to the CBO, Congressional Budget Office. White House and Congress, two different institutions, non-political, not Republican, not Democrat. They both show the same graph. That this shows you that, you know, our pay as individuals, per capita pay, it's been increasing, and so this chart shows us since '68, but if we went all the way back to the time of George Washington, it would be just a few dollars a day. And we would see it gradually increase. So we're at $20,000 in 1968, our average pay. Today in 2010, we're somewhere in here, 2012, we're somewhere in here around 45,000. This is nationwide. In Mexico is actually about 30,000. Around here at 2037, our economy shows, according to our institutions that measure this, that our economy fails. Our government fails. You would say, well, that's not possible. I would have you think back to the Soviet Union. President Reagan said, if we will make the Soviet Union spend more on arms than they're bringing in, we can cause this. The debt will overwhelm them, their economy will fail, and it did. The Soviet Union broke up into small pieces. What we did to the Soviet Union, we're now doing to ourselves. You see that advertisement on TV, the Chinese, who are there and saying those Americans, they try to tax and spend themselves into prosperity. This is what's going on. And I think I'm the only one in the whole country saying it from Congress. I've tried to get my leaders, the Republican leaders. I haven't seen the Democrats. I haven't seen anybody willing to tell you this. Because it is the honest to God truth that we are throwing away the future of our kids and our grandkids. Discarding as if it's nothing. So, in Congress, they've been trying to cut the 3.5. You've heard that. You've heard that we've made draconian cuts, I think, haven't you? And you've heard that the cuts don't mean anything. You've heard both sides. I'll let you decide for yourself. The $60 billion that we cut took this number from 3.5 to 3.44. If you went to your banker and said, you know, I really have made really serious attempts, and I've cut from, say you're making $2,200 a month and you're spending $35. I've cut from $3,500 to $3,440. Is your banker going to give you more money as a loan? I don't think so, and I don't think the Chinese are going to loan us money either. So we have desperate situations ahead of us. I went to Mr. Gaynor, our speaker, about 2 weeks ago, and I said, my friend, with respect, I as a business person do not believe we can cut 3.5 deep enough to balance it at 2.2. I don't think that. I don't believe it. I think that what we must do is look at growing our jobs. That we must do. He said we're going to do it, but I haven't seen it. I'll just tell you. On the last bill, that the continuing resolution, that's just the Democrats last year could not come to consensus, and they didn't pass a budget or appropriations bill, and so they just passed what's called a continuing resolution. We're just going to fund it at the same level it was last year, no budget, no nothing. And we're going to continue that through March. And so you saw this big hubbub in March. Are you going to shut the government down, or are you not? That was the continuing resolution, and we did one 2-week extension, and then we came back for another 3-week extension. Mr. Biden was the chief negotiator for the White House. We did the 2-week extension, and as soon as we passed it, he left and went to Russia. That, to me, didn't indicate he's very serious about the discussion. The 2 weeks came and went, and so our leaders came and said, we want another 3 weeks. I was one of 54 Republicans saying, no, I'm not going to kick the can down the road again, so we voted against our leadership, which is very serious in Washington. We simply said, get about fixing the business of the country. So we're stuck at that point. That's just before we left to come here, and so we've been here for almost a week in the district doing these presentations, talking to people. Anyway, this is the chart. This is just about everything that I need to know to make policy decisions, and everything comes back to this. So we would address the questions. Education. Why are we cutting education? We need to be cutting a lot of things. Whether or not education should be at the top of the list, that should be the American people deciding it. I will tell you the single most important thing we could do in education, keep in mind that we've doubled the amount we give to education here in this state in the last 3 to 4 years. Are you getting double the educational value for your children? No. My belief is the only thing that's going to improve education is to give you a choice to move your money, your child and your money, to a different institution. When you have that choice, now the institution that you're sitting at says, whoa, if I don't improve, they'll go somewhere else. I think that's the only thing. You mentioned my daughter. The education there cost about $1,200 per semester, so about $2,400 per year. I don't know the exact figures, but we're paying about $6,000 per year right now. My daughter's kids are testing, in fact, the whole school is testing, the public schools there in Arkansas, where she is, the public schools are testing at about 50 or 60, something in that range. And their students at this small school, it's a small Christian school, those students are testing 30 points higher. The teachers are making $12,000 a year. $12,000 a year. They're paying $2,400 tuition versus $6,000 to $8,000 in the public schools. If you could take your $2,400 and move over here, I will tell you the public schools would improve immediately. The discussion going on in Wisconsin is exactly this issue. When we look at this figure here, public employees, people that work for the government, are making almost double what we let's say we are actually in the government now, that have never been. So they are making double what the non-government people are doing. So you're asking non-government people to fund people making twice what they are. It's not going to work. It's resulting in this. This is why that's happening. So that would be a brief answer. That are we going to keep on this track? No. It's a failure. It's a failure here, and it could fail as soon as a year or 2 years.